Hi, this is Anna London with Cyvergence, and in this episode, we're going to be talking about International Women's Day 2024, right, which was yesterday, March 8th, okay, but we should be celebrating Women's Day every day of the year, right? We are the givers of life, right, that come through our womb. No one is born without coming through a woman first, right? We're the ones that do give life, okay? Men might provide the seed, but we're the ones that carry life full term, right? So, women actually contribute a lot to society. We're not just birthers, right? We contribute a lot to society. We've got engineers and doctors and, astronauts, okay, mathematicians, teachers, we're in all facets of life. And without us, right, I don't know that society would be, you do away with women, there's no society. The human race would not be able to thrive, right? It would become extinct, okay? So with that said, for Women's Day 2024, the theme, of course, is inspire inclusion, right? That's everything, of course, 100%, right? It doesn't take much to show your support for International Women's Day, okay? A lot of people just post something and then that's it. They go next day. But again, International Women's Day should be every day of the year, not just one day, okay? Just like Valentine's Day, right? A person I dated, for several years, actually, we didn't celebrate Valentine's Day. There was no need because it was every day of the year, right? Just got me a gift or just took me just for a surprise, right? Or just for, so the way we looked at it is Valentine's Day was every day of the year, okay? It shouldn't take one day out of that 365, right, to show support and love to your significant other, okay? So we celebrated it 365 days a year, right? To support women year round, okay? For this International Women's Day weekend, okay, Inspire Inclusion theme calls for action to break down barriers, okay? Challenge stereotypes and create environments where all women are valued and respected, right? In this day and age, we're in 2024, and I cannot believe we're still having to basically beg, borrow, and plead just for basic, rights, human rights, okay? These are not just women rights, they're human rights, okay? Inspire Inclusion encourages everyone to recognize the unique perspectives and contributions of women from all walks of life, including those from marginalized communities. When we talk about marginalized communities, let's look outside the United States for a moment, right? In Nigeria, there were over 800, women and children, that were kidnapped, okay? So, and then in the Middle East, women's rights are marginalized. No one says anything about that. Why? Why? I'm really kind of perplexed by that. And I'm really bothered, actually, and triggered by that, to be quite honest with you. Participating in International Women's Day can drive that recognition, but you shouldn't just do it just for, a like or a follow or whatever. This should be ingrained in everything we do, to inspire others to understand and value women's inclusion. Okay, we forge a better world, right? And when women themselves are inspired to be included, there's a sense of belonging, relevance, and empowerment, okay? So what is International Women's Day, right? It's normally observed annually, of course, on March 8th, okay? That's the dedicated International Women's Day that celebrates the global social, economic, and cultural and political achievements of women all over the world, okay? The day also calls for advance action, right, to gender equality, right? We're still fighting for equal pay and all these things. So we're still facing challenges getting equal pay and leadership positions. Women in the United States, for instance, earned 83 cents for every dollar men earned in 2022, okay, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Since 2000, women worldwide have made huge strides forward in higher education. Women headship and leadership and healthy life expectancy, right, are improving, but are still significantly lagging when it comes to disposable income, okay? And that's according to Euromonitor International, right? So I'm not just making these statistics off the top of my head, referring to actual, statistical analyses, right, done by authoritative sources. Women's average disposable income remains 31% lower than those of men worldwide, okay? And that's according to the research. Women in North America have seen the largest increase with an uplift of 38% in their disposable incomes compared to the global average of 23% over the last 5 years. Right? So income inequality remains one of the most significant obstacles faced by women in reaching gender equality. And it's also used as a method of a form of, domestic violence and abuse. Because when women surrender their financial independence and become completely dependent of their partner, right? Then that is used over their head, because then they have to ask for money for groceries, money for, just basic women's items, or even, recreation, right? Anything, right? And so when you surrender your financial independence, you surrender basically your freedom, right? Because whoever holds the power of the purse, right, basically of the household, holds the control, basically. I mean, look at, even in our nation, right? The president doesn't hold the power of the purse. The president really, yes, he can do executive orders, but anything like even going to war, for instance, requires a financial ask and approval by Congress. Congress has to approve it. They have the power of the purse. And in essence, the Congress actually has the control over the nation, right? So similarly in the household, so I always recommend doing a his, hers, and our account, right? Or a hers and ours, or a his and ours, right? Whatever your, relationship makeup is in your home, right? I'm trying to be inclusive here for everyone. International Women's Day, International Women's Day year, let's call it a year, should be like a global pep rally, right? Celebrating how far we ladies have come while finding, refuge in each other, right? We need to be fired up to keep that momentum raging throughout the year and every year, okay? And multi-generational, right? Inspire our, Gen Zs and millennials too, in addition to us Gen Xers and even above us, the baby boomers and all of that, and the World War II folks, right? So you can't help but feel inspired thinking about the bold trailblazers throughout history who broke down barriers against all odds. The unstoppable suffragettes, straight up heroes like RBG, Amelia Earhart, Serena, right? Those unapologetic women heard no and you can't as a challenge to demolish, right? So I was even told, don't join the army. My uncle, who has since passed from pancreatic cancer, was trying to buy me off and say, well, I'll buy you a moped or a car if you don't join. I joined anyway, right? Because I'm always the odd one out, right? But I did it anyway. I own a business. I'm in technology. I'm in a tech entrepreneur. I do cybersecurity, right? I am hugely left-brained. Okay, I do have a right-brain creativity mindset, but I'm hugely left-brained. And so, for me, I just did it anyways, right? I just did it anyways. And for many times, I was the only woman on an all-male team, especially in engineering, okay? But I didn't let that hold me back, right? Toast the brave ones before us, right? While channeling that same spirit as we keep forging new paths, okay? So when was International Women's Day first celebrated? Let's go back into some history, because I always like to look at where we've originated from, right? The start, the beginning, and of course the evolution to now, and then where we're going in the future. The idea for an International Women's Day was proposed and approved at the Second International Conference of Working Women in Copenhagen, Denmark in 1910. And this came a year after the Socialist Party of America celebrated the first National Women's Day in the U.S. on February 28th, 1909. Okay? The event was observed on March 19th, 1911 in several European countries, with rallies and events calling for women's rights to vote and an end to gender discriminations. Since 1914, March 8th has been the fixed date for International Women's Day. It was moved to be in line with Russian women who celebrated the day on February 23rd on the Gregorian calendar, and the United Nations first recognized International Women's Day in 1975. So then how do we celebrate it, right? Across the globe, demonstrations, have occurred. They've been planned, from Tokyo to Mexico City. But these aren't always celebrations, okay? In previous years, women in Turkey, for instance, protested in Istanbul despite a ban on an, IWD march before police used tear gas to disperse the crowd and detain some protesters. Dozens of those protesters were injured as part of an IWD protest in Mexico City back in 2021. Okay, you can join in many in-person events across the U.S. or just search events on the International Women's Day website. Okay, there's lots, and there's lots of virtual ones too. Okay, so last year's theme, of course, this year's theme is Inspire Inclusion, of course, encourages everyone to recognize the unique perspectives and contributions of women from all walks of life. Okay, International Women's Day organizers, of course, encourage all, not just women, to get involved by striking the Inspire Inclusion pose, basically, making a heart symbol with your hands, okay? And sharing selfies on social media with the hashtags IWD 2024 and hashtag Inspire Inclusion. International Women's Day is not just about women, okay? We can all challenge gender stereotypes, call out discrimination, draw attention to bias, and seek out inclusion, okay? Allies are incredibly important for the social, economic, cultural, and political advancement of women, okay, and future generations. So let's talk about colors. What colors then do we wear on International Women's Day, right? So for cancer, for the Cancer Month, right, it's red, right? I think heart health is red too, I think, from my recollection. For breast cancer awareness, it's pink, et cetera, right? So what colors then do we wear on International Women's Day? So purple, green, and white are considered the colors of International Women's Day, right? Notice how it's not pink. Purple, green, and white, okay? These colors have roots in the United Kingdom's Women's Social and Political Union from the early 1900s, okay? So a lot of history there, folks, a lot of history there. We have a long way to go, okay? And the unfortunate part is the rollback of Roe v. Wade and all that, whether or not you're pro-life. Of course, I'm pro-life. But I'm also pro-choice, right? So, again, you take over the financial control, like I was mentioning earlier, take over the right to the woman's body. That should be up to that person, right, and her doctor, right? No one else should be able to tell us what to do or not, okay? So, whether or not you believed on carrying the baby full term or not, right? I mean, there were laws. It's not like people are giving, abortions full term, right? But I mean, if there is a problem where the baby is stillborn or what have you, right, in vitro, if you will, in utero, then it's important that, because that could be toxic, right? And so even with miscarriages and a variety of things, right? So, we need to not go back. And again, we just barely got voting rights about, 70 years ago, if that. So we still don't have equal pay rights, okay? Now, I own a company, so trust me when I say that, it's equal pay for everyone, right? So I go based upon knowledge, skills, and abilities, right? That's what I do, okay? And I don't care whether you're a man, woman, or whatever, okay, you identify as. But I do it based upon knowledge, skills, and abilities, and of course, the role in which you have assumed, okay? And of course, the years of experience and et cetera, that all goes into play. Whether or not you're beginner, intermediate, or advanced, right? And all that, whether or not you're in a leadership, et cetera, like all that plays a role, okay? But you shouldn't be paying somebody less for doing the same thing. Let's just say the same people, man versus woman, right? We have the same years of experience, the same certifications, right? The same knowledge, skills, and abilities, pretty much, right? Pretty much, in parallel, right, with each other, pretty much equal, pound for pound, if you will. But yet the man, because it's a man, right, gets, let's just say 15% more, right? And I've seen that a lot, especially in engineering, where it's automatically assumed, right, that the man, I don't know, they give more to the man. But again, you get what you ask for, though. So I have actually did a podcast last year. So look it up on Spotify. Just scroll down, right? Because I got, I don't know, 100 and something podcasts at this point. But early last year, 2023, I did a podcast on women's like rights and our ability to negotiate, right, for more money and all that. You get what you ask for, though. Typically men, though, on average, not all men, I don't want to put anybody in a bucket, have no problems asking for what they want, right? For women, right, we really don't ask for what we want. But when you learn that you can and it's okay to ask, it's all in how you do it, though. It's delivery of the message. But you'd be surprised, right? Because if you don't ask, they're not going to give you, right? So if they say, well, you know, if you'd accept, let's just say $40 an hour, and the man that's actually pursuing the same, you know, or similar position, you know, says, well, you know, what's the range, right? And they say, okay, it's between 100,000, let's just say 130,000, right? And that person negotiates because they just had it, you know, asked and talked about it and said, well, you know, how about $60 an hour or whatever, vice 40, right? And so that's negotiated. And so the offer letter then will, you know, be reflective of that. You know, on average, women just accept it, okay? $40, okay, I'll take it, $40 an hour. They don't, though, bother to ask. So the first thing you need to do is ask what the range is, okay? What is the range for that position? Okay, don't get caught up in when somebody asks you, well, what are you willing to accept, right? What is your rate, okay? And if you say $40 an hour, but yet they could have, you know, they could pay you $60 an hour, trust me, they're going to want to make a profit. So, you know, they'll pay you then the $40 an hour, right? And when you could have gotten $60 an hour, and then you wonder why somebody else on site, right, that came in is making the $60 an hour. Well, because they probably asked and you didn't. So don't settle, okay? Don't settle. We're just as worthy and have value, okay, just like our male counterparts, okay? So, and again, be inclusive of everyone, women with disabilities, women from marginalized communities, right? Underserved communities, right? Women from all religious affiliations and backgrounds, right? Ethnicities, right? Everything. So, you know, we need to be helpful of each other. There was a Twitter space that I happened into yesterday, and somebody was trying to call me out or to call me up. I'm not, why? You know what I mean? You knew it was going to be a more of a bullying type of a scenario, right? Why? I mean, I just ignored it because my thing is, it's not even worth my time. And it's Twitter, for goodness sakes. I mean, you know, X Spaces, if you will. So really, it's not like anybody's of any relevance, you know. I mean, Twitter, X Spaces, it's just social media. That's just like saying, right, you know, like the TikTok influencers or the Instagram models, right? So really, I mean, come on, really, you know, unless you have a valid, you know, contract with Elite Model Management or whatever, I'm just saying, right? I mean, really, I mean, you're just like self-proclaimed then. And same thing with the X Spaces, you know, folks on there. Many of them have been found to not even, you know, be who they claim they are. And, you know, they just like to, they're clout chasers. They just, you know, they're all in it for themselves and the likes and things like that. And they like to talk. They like to hear themselves talk, right? But I wasn't going to fall for it because, again, I was, you know, petitioned for, it was a response that I had done like a couple of years ago concerning the vaccines, right? So I'm not an anti-vaxxer, okay, or anything like that. In fact, I am vaccinated. My kids are vaccinated. So, you know, I was one of those that did comply. Of course, if I didn't comply, you know, call me a sheep, call me whatever, but, you know, you have to be in compliance, right? And, you know, lose contracts, lose a variety of things, especially when you're supporting government, et cetera, right? I have kids to take care of. You can't exactly, you know, but anyways, there was some information and just a response that I did because it was about research and analyses. I'm all about science, okay, and engineering, right? Like the facts. You know, forget truth because truth is truth is subjective too because everyone has their own truth, right? Their own perspectives. And so they have their own truth, you know. For me, I'm just about fact. It either is what it is. And so there was a research paper that was done right? That, because they were pushing real fast to get everything, so the vaccinations out to market without really doing legitimate trials and research. Okay. It was a very, and I know they pushed it. I know that both the Trump administration and of course Biden administration was pushing to get it out there, right? Because, it was a typical vaccine takes years, okay, to do it right. And especially with the mRNA and all this other stuff. So yeah, I was, just like with anything new, right? You want to make sure that it's been out for a while and fully vetted and tested before you put something in your body, right? That just goes without saying, So yes, I was concerned because I'm like, okay, this hasn't really been fully vetted and tested. And the clinical trials weren't even done in accordance with what would normally be done even for like an FDA review or peer medical review analyses, right? So yeah, I did have some concerns because, not all of the data was out yet, and they wanted us all to put this in our bodies, just again be compliant. So yeah, I was one of those that had to, because again, I have to put food on the table for my kids, right? I'm a mother, I'm a single parent, right, and all that. My kids are now grown, So my daughter at the time, though, was an adult because she's in college, and it was up to her, and even her, she's in the medical field. Even her, she was second guessing. She says, I don't know that I'm going to get it because this really hasn't been fully vetted, right? And, just looking at common sense, right? So it doesn't make you bad or doesn't make you an anti-vaxxer for questioning, just like with anything, when something comes new, number one, it needs to be either FDA approved or whatever, right? It goes through significant testing and evaluation and analyses to determine whether it's not even safe for you, right? Whether or not it's a piece of equipment or anything. In this case, you're putting something in your body, right? And there have been actually deaths linked to side effects with the vaccine, okay? So, take it what you will, okay? Enlarged heart problems, youth, dying, all that kind of stuff. So that is real, it's fact. Some of us were not affected, right? But others were, okay? And it depends on what you had, right? So I had the Moderna, right, vaccine, and my son had the Pfizer, okay? So, they say I'm a colon cancer survivor, so they said I was high risk, I guess, and so they gave me the Moderna vaccine. Same pharmacy, same clinic that we got it at, He ended up getting the Pfizer vaccine because he was younger, right? So, look, I am vaccinated, but I didn't feel like I had to a complete stranger, right? Just validate my stance, or even, who is it anybody's business anyways, right? So, but again, they take something that you say, a snippet, a response, a tweet, and then they completely take it out of context, because again, it was in support of research that was done to identify the fact that the clinical trials weren't even done, in line with, compliance, right? Medical compliance, as would be any review of any pharmaceutical anything, right? So, it was just looking at that. Even like when LASIK surgery, even, eye surgery, for instance, first came out, I was like, I'm not touching it yet until it's been fully, like, give it about 5 or 10 years. Then I'll look into it. Because again, anything new, right, you want to make sure that it's fully vetted and tested, et cetera. And, right? Because you shouldn't just jump on the bandwagon, which is for everybody else, and because you never know. And it could affect you differently. We're all wired differently. We all have different genetical, genes and makeup and things. So we could go in and get the same vaccine. We could be the same age, right? Same height, same weight, everything. But, maybe it doesn't affect me, but it could affect you sitting right next to me, right? So because we're all different people, right? Even our brains are wired differently, right? So, which is a beautiful thing, right? So that's all that was just, I got vaccinated anyways, okay? Call me a sheep, call me what you will. The right will call me a sheep. The left will say I'm compliant. But yet they took it out of context that I was even questioning, like the validity of, actual medical reviews, right, that had not gone by, traditional, evaluation to meet compliance when it came to, the clinical trials, right? Because it was rushed to market. We know this. We all know that. And of course, there's always risk when you do that with anything, right? That's like even software. You need to test it, test it for scalability, test it for usability, test it, do user acceptance testing, make sure it's secure, like all these things. If you rush to market, right, there's going to be a lot of bugs in it. I'm just saying, so bugs and all kinds of things, right? So you don't know what the outcome will be, right? If you just rush to market, right? Just put it out there, and pray, the pull out and pray method or whatever, they call it when, especially when you're whatever. But you get what I'm saying, right? So that's all that was just looking at there's research by actual medical doctors, right? That have a background in immunology and a variety of things. So yeah, that was all that was. But anyways, but that was a woman. I'm bringing it up because it's germane to this conversation. It's germane to this podcast because it was a fellow woman on International Women's Day trying to call out a fellow woman and almost like calling me out in front, right? And trying to make me look bad or something. And I just knew she was baiting me and I wasn't going to accept it. I wasn't even going to accept the bait, right? Because she was hosting it, and of course the host always gets, because they can shut you up, it doesn't matter. So the host of an X space, right, manages the X space. And so many times they'll allow you to say maybe a snippet of things, but you're very limited in what you can say. Other times they might give you more time to speak, right? But I didn't even feel it was worth my time. I didn't know this woman, and yeah, it was definitely suspect anyways, but I thought, why are you poking at another woman, right? And like almost like it's a bully thing. It was like bullying, social media bullying, okay? But I didn't fall for it because I'm like, yeah. So I, ducked out. I'm like, yeah, forget you. It's not even worth my time in response, right? I mean, if you do research on me, you can do whatever, right? But I am all about fact, okay? I am a science person. I am an engineer person. I'm a builder. I'm an innovator, right? I'm a STEAMist, right? So I'm an educator, right, in things. And my students will even tell you, I'm all about fact. It either is or it isn't there. That's what I like about cybersecurity, because you can't skirt the truth. It either is or it isn't, okay? And, we substantiate things by fact, by evidentiary artifacts to substantiate compliance, okay? So for me, I'm just about fact, and I look and I research and I analyze things, and I look at authoritative sources, right? So, stop taking people's tweets out of context. Like, do and look at the research and analyses. Don't just do the grok thing, that they're doing, and they like to pull something up. Oh, you said such and such. Yeah, okay. They were trying to bait me and bully me in there or whatever. And it was just a quick response. It was just like, I think, a sentence just saying just about the evaluation, right? I mean, needs to be really clear, concise, good follow through, etc., just to make sure that this stuff is even safe to put in our bodies and what the after effects will be, right? So, that's all. And there have been side effects, right? Because, they weren't able to test it in the number of people that are normally needed to do a really good evaluation and the time, right? So, but yeah, they rushed to market. We know this, and both administrations sanctioned it, right? So they pushed it out because of the COVID situation, and people actually died from COVID, right? It was a pandemic, whether or not you think of it or not, right? And, people were actually dying from it 100%. Other people, it wasn't affecting them as bad, right? So you could get a bout of it and be over it. And now, too, like you can get a bout of it. Like I've even had it and I got over it, right? But I have been vaccinated. Okay, I didn't go through like the 8 vaccines, though. I think that's a little bit much, right? So I got a couple of vaccines. I got the 2, right? But I heard the 3rd and the 4th, right, are the ones that are causing problems. And so, again, but I did get at least the first 2. And I haven't had any issues since then, right? So I've been fine. In fact, I got COVID, and then it was a very quick, quick recovery period or whatever. So, but again, that's something between you and your doctor, whether or not you should get vaccinated or not, whether or not it's going to affect you, because again, I'm immunocompromised because I'm a cancer survivor, right? So I have to take all that in consideration, right? And that has to be something between you and your doctor, right? You shouldn't judge somebody, based upon a tweet, right? Based upon social media, the quagmire of chaos and misinformation on social media, right? And it's cyberbullying. I mean, that's what she was trying to do in the next space. And I'm like, I wasn't going to fall for it. Yeah, especially on International Women's Day, forget you, right? It's just not even worth my time, not even worth my breath, okay, to even explain myself to somebody that had already made a predetermined opinion based upon that tweet. Right. She had even posted it like at the top of the thing. So I'm like, but there's nothing. It was harmless. It was harmless. So there's nothing I get canceled over. Anyway, it was a harmless. It was a harmless tweet. But again, she took it completely out of context because she wasn't looking at the whole, the contextual discussion or what it was even referencing. Right. She just did a grok, inquiry. Right. A grok query, and then of course that's what came up, and she's like, "Oh, Anna London, you need to speak to this." Da 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 da. She was trying to bait me, but yeah, I'm older, right, and so it does take a lot to get. I am passionate about what I do. I love what I do, but the good thing for me is, like I said, I'm an engineer, so I'm left-brained a lot, right? So I take the analyses. I do critical thinking, okay, and analyses, which I think is missing from schools right now anyways. So because again, I'm not going to sit there and allow somebody to try to bait me into a conversation or something where she would have actually controlled the narrative anyway, right? Because she was the host of the X Space. So fellow women, empower each other. Like, don't be bullies, okay? Like, what the heck, man? She could have DM'd me directly and said, hey, I saw this tweet, right? You want to explain it, okay? And, of course, I'm going to call you in to, talk about it. Are you willing to talk about it? And I would have been, okay, or whatever, But she didn't give me that opportunity. She called me out in front of everyone. So, which I felt was... again, cyberbullying in an X space, and kind of fishing for drama, if you will. And I wasn't going to take the bait. I'm smarter than that. So I have a little more common sense. And I know, I can tell you can tell people's agenda, right? By their tone, their inflection, what they try to do, and all that. And she was a complete stranger. She doesn't even know me, right? So I'd have been in there amongst wolves, if you will, or a bunch of sharks, on a feeding frenzy, just looking for something to incite, drama on for, entertainment in an X space. Right. So anyways, with that said, happy International Women's Day, March 8th. I know that was yesterday, but again, we should be celebrating it every day. And, teach your daughters also, teach your sons about respect for women. Women are abused a lot. There's a lot of places, even outside the United States, that, not even allowed education, married at 9 and 10 and 11, right? And never even allowed to own anything of their own, have to be chaperoned by men. Men make the decisions. It goes from the father, and then it goes to the husband to make the decision on behalf of the woman. Women are raped. Women are, we're, demoralized. We're demeaned, and there's rapes going on. Like I said, the Nigerian thing where, about 800, women and children were kidnapped, and, there's rapes. The rapes aren't even making the news. The Nigerian terrorist, if you will, kidnapping that occurred within the last 72 hours was a blip, okay, on mainstream media. So, why? It's like women's rights don't matter. So, where are the feminists? Feminists, right? I did a podcast on feminism too. So all feminism means is pro women's rights, right? So where is everyone? Honestly, my fellow women sticking up for other women, not just in the States, but elsewhere around the world where other women are affected big time, right? We need to challenge that. We need to make sure and change is done, not just on a day just to bring in, entertainment value in the next space, but some action that's actually taken to ensure those governments, right, enforce, human rights, women's rights, right? Not only here, but abroad. So yeah, I am triggered. I am bothered by what's going on in the world and even in our own home, backyard where, women's rights just seem like we're rolling back the clock. We barely got, like I said, the right to vote about 75 years ago or so. And, like I said, Roe v. Wade was turned back. There's a lot of things where it's just being turned back, and we're losing actually our rights here in the States. We're losing rights. So it's 2024, folks. I mean, come on. I just don't agree with what's going on right now in the world. And I think we should band together, not violence or not even in protest, because protests, honestly, people really don't. It's like noise, okay? It's like yelling during a conversation. Getting louder or more obtuse in a conversation doesn't bring the point home. It doesn't do anything for you. In fact, it makes you look like an idiot. You lose credibility with the audience that's listening. If you have to yell or raise your voice, right, come up with a better argument then, right? Come up with a better debate stance, right, and your justification, right? Sometimes it's education too on the other side, right? But yelling doesn't do anything. Just same thing with protest. Protest, because a lot of people end up like intertwining themselves into that protest. And so they incite violence and, do a variety of things they shouldn't. And so then what? What have you accomplished at that point, right? So, change is done in legislation, laws, okay? So your government, and who writes the laws for the country? Like in our case, it's Congress. So if you have a problem with the way a law is written, okay, whether it be systemic racism or, systemic, gender discrimination, etc., right? That's legislation, that's law, okay? And at the federal level, it's Congress. So contact your congressmen and women, right, that are supposed to be representing the people, right, in the whatever district, okay? Also help to enact change through your mayor, right? The governor, right? Because the city, state, local, also laws, right, are impacted. Okay? Do it there because that's changing laws then that can be enforced, right? That's what needs to be done, okay? And bring awareness, but not through violent protests or even like protests really don't do much. I mean, honestly, they're really good news fodder, if you will, but that's about it. I mean, then something else comes up and replaces it, right? So, again, enact change through working with your congressmen or women, your government entities, your schools also, right, to enact change, because that's where it is, right? That's where it happens. And that's really the only way that we can do this, okay? Because, again, you can have a protest all you want, but if the laws never change, then that systemic racism is still very much in those law books, right? Same thing with gender inequality, right? Right now there's still laws in place in the United States where your husband, okay, can actually commit you to a psych ward, okay? Those, rules and laws have not been changed here. So again, that's what I'm talking about is, enact change through helping to change the laws, the very laws in which our police officers need to enforce, our courts have to enforce, right? So that's the core, that's the root cause of the problem, and that the solution is work with our legislators to change those laws, okay? Otherwise, what's the point, okay? So, protests do help to a certain degree, but a lot of them are ending up in like violence and stuff anymore anyways. And so again, you scream louder, It's like in Peanuts, right? Wah 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 wah. The teacher, right? That's all you hear because you tune it out. Just like in X Spaces or other debate forums where I sit in and I listen. There was a gentleman today just screaming basically through the phone. I just wouldn't say screaming, but yelling is really loud, and so I ended up tuning him out. Honestly, I just tuned him out. What he said was valid, of course, but the problem is you lose credibility and you lose steam and you lose you lose actually your argument just by screaming, okay, just by yelling, if you will. What's the point? If you have to get louder, come up with a better argument then, right? That's my point. So anyways, with that said, women, let's help each other, okay? Men also help women, okay? Bestow on your sons and your daughters the importance of women's health, women's rights, right? Human rights, because women's rights are human rights, okay? So with that said, I hope this was helpful. Again, I had to vent because I was triggered too. It's like, especially with what's going on in Nigeria, nobody seems to care. Why? Why isn't anybody saying anything? I don't get it. And in Iran, the Ayatollah, he's the head of the human rights of United Nations. What is going on with the world, right? Where, there were women that were stoned to death and hung and killed, for not wearing their hijabs correctly, right? Or not wearing one at all, right? And stuff. So women have zero rights in other places, and we're losing them here in the States, okay? So, just, digest that for a moment and look beyond yourself to help other people, right, too. But we also need to help ourselves here, too, in America. Let's not lose sight of what's going on here. Okay, we matter. We do. We matter, okay? We matter. And I think instead of separating it by race, if you will, or an ethnicity, if we were to all come together, together as one, okay, we're stronger together. See, if you divide, you conquer, and that's what's been happening. There's a huge division among races, and even among women, right? Even among women. But if you come together, right, we're stronger together, and we can enact change together, okay? So the civil rights wasn't just a one race, issue. There were white people too, Asian people, right, alongside black people, right, arm in arm, right, for civil rights, right? Same thing with the Civil War, actually. There were white people on the north side, by the way. That war would never have been won or never have been started, right, if it wasn't for also white people hand in hand, arm in arm, realizing that this is wrong. Slavery is evil, okay? Slavery is evil, right? So, the Southern people, right, or whatever, the Confederates, wanted, of course, to keep slavery in place, right? And women were raped then too, so it was really horrible, right? But again, that's my point I'm trying to make is it didn't happen by one set of people. It happened with a multitude of Americans, right? Different races, different ethnicities. But we're all the same nationality, e.g. Americans coming together and say, look, this has got to stop, right? This has got to stop, right? This is a human right issue. This is a civil rights issue, okay? And so slavery was stopped. Now it comes in different forms, right? Because again, the laws on the books, okay, even though we have the 13th Amendment and then, of course, the 14th Amendment in the Constitution, there's still the laws on the books, though, that are very systemic in nature. Okay. So again, it's the laws. If we could get in and change the laws, the state, local, federal level, right? Then that is what it takes. Okay. Because again, these protests, you can get out protest, you can go out and, whatever, loot and rob people and blow up business. All you're hurting is the local business people. I have a business too. Right. So what are you going to do then? We're a job provider. So why would you hurt that? I don't understand that. That doesn't do anything but hurt your cause because it makes you look like an idiot. You lose all credibility and traction. Okay? But again, legislation's where it's at. Okay? And I know I sound like a broken record, but legislation, laws, who writes the laws? Federal laws is Congress. So when Congress are griping too, by the way, their job is to write the laws, the bills, the laws, the acts, right? So when Affordable Health Care Act, that's a law, right? Et cetera. right? They're the ones that do that, okay? So, if you want change, you need to work with those legislators at those various levels in order to enact that change, so that it's changed in the rule books. Like even the tax law, tax code, that's law, right? And so everybody gripes about, well, the rich people aren't paying enough. Well, they're just following the laws, just like Trump said a few years ago, right? He said, well, I'm following the laws, and he is actually. He's paid his taxes. If you look, people want to say he doesn't pay. He did actually pay his taxes. You got to give him that. But he's doing it in accordance with what our laws say. Our current tax code says. When we annual taxes, we all look at ways that we can have tax write-offs and things, so we're not paying a lot of money in taxes, right? Where we don't have to, right? Legally, all right. So, and the rich people actually have assets, okay? So they have assets in stocks and real estate and a variety of things, okay? So, which is different than what the average, person has. And so basically who's paying the taxes is mostly the middle and upper middle class that are paying the taxes, right? Because if you don't meet the annual threshold to even pay taxes, then you're exempt from it, right? So, it has to be over a certain amount, okay? But I guarantee you, if you're making, 80, 90,000 and above, easily, 70, 80, 90,000 above, I think it's even less than that. But then you have to, of course, pay taxes, right? You have to report it and pay taxes. So, that's something to contend with. But again, it's all based upon the tax code. Those are laws. So if you don't like the fact that rich people aren't paying it, well, then work to get the laws changed. That's the only way it's going to be done, because you can't enforce things that are not, written down legally, right? Even like the border situation, there's actually existing laws that cover that. There's nothing else that needs to be done. Like the current administration has everything they need actually to enact it. Doesn't have to be another bill written for a border. That's all just political, okay, a political fodder, if you will, used against the Republicans, okay, or whatever, honestly. But, they really didn't have to pass yet another bill, okay. President Biden already has the ability, okay, to make that change at the border, right? Help with human rights and civil rights, of course, with the people that are coming through the border, right, or whatever, but do it legally, do it in accordance with our current laws. There doesn't need to be any more laws written. They just need to be enforced. That's all. So anyways, with that said, I hope this is helpful. Folks, do some research and analysis on your own. Don't just go by what, Twitter or X people say or social media. It's all just BS. This whole citizen journalist thing is a bunch of BS, because people can just post anything that they want. And again, you can find anything, right? If you're biased, which you're biased naturally because you're human, okay? There's nobody that's completely objective, let's be real, okay? Normally the people will take from whatever side that they want, whether it be a visual or something written, to support their truth, if you will, right? So again, I'm a fact-based person, okay? Again, truth to me is still subjective, because everyone lives within their own truth, right? And just like when you have an argument, right? There's his, hers, based on what really happened, right? So, because I go based on fact. So with that said, I probably spoke too much, but, happy International Women's, I'll just say year, okay? Every day should be International Women's Day, okay? Thank a woman in your life, thank your mom. I know we have Mother's Day coming up, but you should thank your moms, your aunts, your sisters, right? Your partners, right? Your friends, right? And all that. I mean, women do a lot for society, okay? We're not just birthers, okay? And I'll be damned if you're going to put me in that bucket anyways. I'm not just a birther, okay? So anyways, with that said, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank a woman today. Encourage women, okay? Empower women. Empower each other. Let's come together to make change, right? All right, enjoy your weekend. This is Anna London with Cyvergence, signing out.